This video is on lesson 5, balancing chemical equations. So before I even want to talk about balancing chemical equations, I want to start with an analogy. So let's say you need to make a cake. And in this cake recipe, you need eggs, sugar, butter, and flour. And you mix all those things together, you end up with your product, a cake, right? Now, this recipe is fine and all, except for the fact that you have no idea how many eggs, sugar, butter, or flour you need, which means you could end up with a really not so great tasting cake, right? So you need to know the exact amounts of egg, sugar, butter, flour, or your ingredients, also known as your reactants in chemistry, in order to have an awesome product or an awesome cake. So that's why we need to balance chemical equations. Right, so let's start with how to balance a chemical equation. So first things first, all I need to do is if I am given a chemical equation, like so over here, I need to separate my reactants from my products. So in green, I'm going to box my reactants. And in blue, I'm going to do my products. Right? Products are at the end of the arrow, reactants before the arrow. Pretty simple. After I have determined what my reactants and my products are, I need to figure out how many elements and of what type of elements I have in my reactants and how many and what type of elements I have in my products. So let's do that. So in this first example, I have N2. N is nitrogen, and I have 2 nitrogens, right? Because my subscript, the tiny number over here, says 2. The other reactant I have is H2. So my element is hydrogen, and I have 2 of those. Again, because my subscript is 2. For products, I have NH3. So N next to it on the bottom, there is no subscript. And if there is no subscript, that means I only have 1 nitrogen. H3, subscript is 3. So 3 is my subscript. Right now, I have 2 nitrogens on my reactant side and 1 nitrogen on my product side, 1 hydrogen on my reactant side, and 3 hydrogens on my product side. I think I said 2 hydrogens on my products when I meant reactants. But in any case, you can see that in my reactant side versus my product side, they're not the same. They're not balanced. So this does not meet the law of conservation of matter, which is bad, right? Because this can't be possible. So we need to balance this chemical equation by adding numbers to the coefficients, right? Because I change the numbers of the coefficients, it tells me how many molecules I have of each, and that way I can make both sides equal. So let's start doing that. Pick a different color. Let's do pink. So here I'm going to start with nitrogen. And specifically, I know that I can add more of an element, but I can't take away more of an element. So nitrogen has 1. If I change this to 2, sorry about this, let's get rid of this. If I change my coefficient to 2, that means I have 2 NH3 molecules. So if you imagine there was the 1 there, 2 times 1 is 2. That gives me 2 nitrogens total. right? So now I have 2 nitrogens, which matches up with my reactant side. That's awesome, except for the fact that now H3, I also need to multiply by 2. And it's going to unbalance things a little bit, right? So 2 times the subscript for H, which is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. So now on my product side, I have 6 hydrogens total. So now my nitrogens are balanced, or they're even. That means I have 2 nitrogens on my reactants, 2 nitrogens on my products, but my hydrogens are not balanced because I have 2 hydrogens here and 6 hydrogens in the product side. I need to make them equal. So I'm going to try to fix it over here. So now I have the subscript 2. I need to figure out a way to get 6 hydrogens total. So I can think of it this way. It's basically 2 times what will give me 6 hydrogens total here, right? And think about it for a little bit. The answer is 3. So if I take 3 times 2, that gives me 6 hydrogens total. And now both sides, my reactants and my products, are even. So my recipe is balanced, which is what I want. Here, where nitrogen, you didn't really do anything to it and it's blank, just leave it blank. You don't need to write down 1 or anything like that. Just leave it blank. That automatically denotes it as 1. Awesome. So a couple of practice problems to try below. So from here below are your practice problems. You're just going to balance these equations. Make sure to write this down in your notebooks. Some are easier than others. Some are a little tricky. You need to continue adding. Just keep trying and eventually you'll get to it.